All right, what's up? Happy Black Friday, everybody. Hope y'all had an awesome Thanksgiving. Kiffin Watch 2025 rolls on. Guess for one more day. Um, Figured we'd fire up a live stream here after kind of skimping a little bit on Morning Scone today. We were going to get our Christmas tree, and we had issues with the audio and all that stuff. And I guess it's even more appropriate now, considering Florida's out of it. The Egg Bowl is over. Ole Miss won it. Lane's made his post-game comments, etc. So a lot we can get into here. So thanks for being there. YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. Appreciate you for hanging out with us. Remind you about Parish Construction and Roofing, parishbuilt.com. Love to give you that free, no obligation roofing inspection, parishbuilt.com. So I'll give you a few thoughts, and we'll get to all your questions and comments, etc. Drew's hanging out too. Yep. Got all of his Christmas toys out, so he's fired up. So I guess the first big news of the day was Florida out of the running. No surprise here. Kind of shared that with y'all for at least a week now. I believe last Friday, the day that Kiffin's contract terms with LSU were leaked, I believe that was really the line of demarcation where Kiffin had clearly chosen LSU, and there were people associated with Florida who knew it. And the report didn't get a ton of fanfare, but Ross Dellinger did report earlier in the week that Florida had begun interviewing other candidates, sort of moving on in their search. We talked about that on Locked on LSU. Florida moving on in their search. Ole Miss sort of soft launching their search, where it seemed pretty apparent 4 or 5 days ago that Lane Kiffin was going to be in Baton Rouge. But the caveat I've thrown out a ton, and y'all have heard me say it, is it's never over until it's done, until you have a signed binding agreement. And so the fear, I think, or fear might be a strong word, but the concern from LSU was, you had to get through this week and get through the Egg Bowl and hope that nothing changed, anything out of your control that would cause Lane Kiffin to get cold feet. And meanwhile, all week he's with his team and they're preparing for a game and the playoff looming and all that sort of stuff. So all those things weighing on him. So the report this morning that Florida was out, again, the only people that thought Florida was in it were some Florida reporters and, by extension, some Florida fans, which just was not the case. They haven't really been in the mix for at least a week now. And so then it comes down to LSU and Ole Miss. Would have been great for LSU if Mississippi State had pulled that upset. I think it would have made Lane Kiffin's decision much easier. But Ole Miss won at 11-1. They've no doubt clinched a playoff berth at this point. So as we've said all along, Kiffin's desire is to coach his team. He wants to leave, but he wants to coach his team in the playoff. So if this were a situation where Kiffin could coach his team whenever they were eliminated from the playoff, then he could leave for LSU, I think that's what would happen. It's complicated by the fact that he wants to coach his team, but Ole Miss, as I've told you now for 2 weeks, is not going to let him coach that team if he's leaving. They will absolutely not let him coach in the playoff if he's leaving. The other thing that could complicate things further is what happens tonight in the Texas A&M game. Remember, if Texas upsets Texas A&M, that means the Iron Bowl Ole Miss has a direct rooting interest in the Iron Bowl. Because if Texas upsets Texas A&M and Auburn beats Alabama, which I would love to see, then Ole Miss is in the SEC championship. And you better believe Lane Kiffin would want to coach his team in the SEC championship. So I think those things stacking up could line up for a return to Ole Miss. I don't know. I know I haven't looked at comments yet. I'll get to them here in a second. People are probably asking percentages. What do you think? I don't know. I'm not really good at that. percentages. I don't even know how to answer that really. It's completely arbitrary and may read differently into percentages. But I think it was overwhelmingly likely early this week that Kiffin was going to be the LSU coach. And I think the closer you got to this game, now the reality of the playoff is there for Ole Miss. I think it makes it a little more complicated. I think if you were watching that game, there was this guy. The first question said, what do you make of the post game? The post game didn't seem joyous or with jubilation. It seemed like relief because, and Lane even said this in his post game, had they lost that game, the narrative would have been solely on Lane being a distraction. And he's right. That's what it would have been. And that would have made it very easy for LSU, though, then to land Lane had it happened that way. So now we kind of wait. I think in his post-game press conference, Lane also said, he's got to make a decision tomorrow. That's not me saying it. So look at the things that have lined up now. Last week, Keith Carter on Friday, a week ago today, released that statement that I think I have it still. He released that statement last Friday that Lane, here it is, that Lane would make a decision about his future after the egg win. Not my words, Keith Carter's words. Look at the last line. An announcement on Coach Kiffin's future is expected the Saturday following the game. So a week ago, Keith Carter said, a decision is expected.
Mom, Dad, type it, then Shay Dixon.
Oh, you want to listen to Shay Dixon?
Okay.
He loves watching Shay Dixon. Why you love watching Shay Dixon so much? Huh? The Bengal Tiger. There it is. Recruiting, yes. Watch recruiting. Watching. Shay, if you're watching, there you go. I told you that before. Now you saw it in the flesh. So I forgot where I was. Sorry. So, and then Kiffin said his post game, he's got to make a decision tomorrow. So this becomes even more complicated now because of what's happened with John Summerall. So it is my understanding that all through this process, LSU's number 2 was Eli Drinkwitz. Drinkwitz on Thanksgiving agreed to an extension with Missouri. Now, here is one interesting tidbit. What I was told today is that Drinkwitz's extension with Missouri, the buyout did not change. So, in theory, he could still leave, even though he's got this new extension. He could leave for exactly what it was a day ago. And given the right situation or circumstance, he may still do that. I think that's unlikely. I don't know that Drinkwitz would agree to an extension at Missouri and then a couple of days later leave Missouri. Although the contract does allow it. I'll put it to you that way. It's my understanding that if Kiffin decides to stay at Ole Miss, LSU would very quickly pivot to John Summerall. So the interesting thing with Summerall is Auburn was very far down the road, as I understand it. Maybe there were some complicating factors there with DJ Durkin. Like John Cohen wants DJ Durkin on staff as DC and is pushed for that, and some other staff things made it not necessarily the most attractive. I think that's one of the reasons why Drinkwitz. I don't know that I could say he was ever offered the Auburn job, but maybe wasn't interested in Auburn. So that leaves Auburn in a really interesting spot where they would be. But Florida has zeroed in on John Summerall. I don't mind saying that at all. And I think it's smart by Florida. So they're sitting there trying to push Summerall for an answer, knowing full well that Kiffin is going to pick Ole Miss or LSU. And whichever one Kiffin doesn't pick is going to want Summerall. If Kiffin comes to LSU, Ole Miss is going to want John Summerall. Remember, he was an assistant there prior as well. If Kiffin stays at Ole Miss, LSU's going to want John Summerall. Well, Florida's trying to hurry to get a deal done with Summerall so as not to get scooped again by Ole Miss or LSU with Summerall. And so they wanted a decision rather quickly, but there was a report, I believe it was from Thamel today, that Summerall is waiting to Sunday to make his announcement or his decision. So Tulane will play their game, and then on Sunday, Summerall will assess what happens. Hopefully they have a decision from Kiffin, and then he can assess what options are there, either, again, among the same three. It's interesting because you have Kiffin, Summerall, and you have Ole Miss, LSU, and Florida. So you have three schools, two coaches. Someone's going to get left out in the cold with however this coaching carousel stops there. So if you play the hypothetical that Kiffin stays at Ole Miss and let's say Summerall goes to Florida, what does LSU do next? That gets really complex. I know a lot of LSU fans have asked about Dillingham, and I'm not ruling out Dillingham. I'm just telling you that I've only casually heard that name. I don't know that I've heard that earnestly. It is important to note that I believe thought Kenny Dilling, it is. Okay. Yeah. So Clint Dowdle is Dillingham's agent as well. So Clint Dowdle's an interesting factor in this whole thing because remember, everybody knows Jimmy Sexton. Clint Dowdle represents Marcus Freeman, Eli Drinkwitz, John Summerall, Kenny Dillingham. So when I say it to you, whenever you're talking to an agent, you're never talking to just one coach. You're talking to dozens of coaches through that agent. So when you're talking to Clint Dowdle, you're talking to Eli Drinkwitz and John Summerall and Kenny Dillingham. And so I think there's a chance that if it's not Kiffin, it would end up in one of that ecosystem there with Dowdle. So, it's entirely possible that maybe Dillingham is still in play and we're just not aware of it. And the long shot, which I have mentioned, I wrote about this, by the way, as well at louisianasports.net. The long shot would be Blake Baker, but the way that's kind of been described to me from the beginning would kind of be like a safety net. You'd have the really popular assistant who they could promote. Again, I don't think that would be, I don't think LSU fans would be ecstatic about it, considering we've been teased with Lane Kiffin now for the past 2 weeks. But I think you could sell Baker. Popular assistant, a lot of assistants promoted at major Power 4 jobs have had success. Retain staff, it'd be more affordable. So there's a lot of reasons that could work. So, all right. Please smash the like button. Got 1,100 people watching, almost 1,200 people watching. I love that. Thank you all so much, man. Appreciate you for being here. Please smash the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. See if I can get some of your questions and comments here. We'll just scroll and go and see what y'all got. Chris, we're going to find out mid-game day tomorrow. Smash cut from Stanford Steve to Pete Thamel. Maybe. Trivia, what up? Thomas, Brad, what's going on? Can we cuss in this one? Sure, you can cuss. We just don't cuss on Morning Scone. Morning Scone is G-rated. It's family-friendly. No cursing on Morning Scone. But if you want to curse here, you can. I probably won't, but you can. Kelly, hey, Kelly, good evening. Love your neighbor. Happy holidays. Seth, been dying friend for all day. Yeah, man, glad to be here. Thank you. What did I miss today? Let's see. Henry, hey, Matt, hear me out. A case for John Gruden. I'm not going to hear you out. I'm sorry, Henry. I don't mean to be dismissive of you, Henry, but I'm just going to exist in reality. So you can want John Gruden. They're not hiring John Gruden. So there's no sense in us wasting time with that conversation. I just rather have a conversation about reality. I'm not trying to be rude or dismissive. It's just that's not happening. So there's no sense in us having the conversation. Hey, Dax, how you feeling about tomorrow? I'm going to go to sleep tonight and wake up and wait for my phone to ping 1,000 times, which will likely tomorrow will likely be a very similar day to the day Brian Kelly got fired. Let's see. Let's have great news soon. I'll be in the woods tomorrow, probably no signal. Yeah, y'all lock into all of our socials, louisianasports.net, my show text line, 225-396-4400, 396-4400. If I have any breaking news, that's where I'll share it to first. What did you drink on Thanksgiving? Old fashioned and red wine. I was right. I mean, look, I said this on my Locked On. I don't need to take a victory lap. I'll tell you, it is sort of satisfying because a lot of Florida fans were disgusting to me in my mentions, but I don't care. It's part of the thing. So it is satisfying. But I knew I was right. That's the thing. Like, I think, one of the really challenging parts of sort of new media is that people think because they have a microphone that they're a reporter, and you're not. Like, I'm not a reporter. I'm a talk show host. However, I am journalistically trained. I do have a news background. I went to journalism school. I just don't practice reporting a lot because I'm not a reporter. Because we have louisianasports.net, it has made me get back into that fray where it does benefit us to report news and break news and things like that. So, but it's not an easy thing, and it takes a lot of time and years to cultivate sources and to know what's good information and what you should go with and what you shouldn't go with. And it's complicated for me because I am a talk show host, so I'm giving opinions, but then also because of louisianasports.net reporting at times as well. So it is complicated. That's why I always tell you, like, I'll be very, very, very clear when I'm telling you, this is my opinion. When I'm giving you opinion, when I feel like I'm giving you facts. But I mean, I've cultivated so many relationships with Florida, Ole Miss, and LSU, from boosters at all three and administrators and assistants and yes, and media members who we're friendly with, who I think do a good job. And I mean, I feel like some of the Florida beat were only talking to people within the Florida ecosystem. And so they were only getting one side of the story. It's why they were so wrong on this. Else, you better start looking somewhere else. Kiffin isn't leaving. I wouldn't say that. I would say this, Jarrett. If Kiffin had a golden opportunity today, I mean, they beat their rival, they win the Egg Bowl, they punch the ticket to the playoff, and he has the opportunity to say, I'm staying. And he didn't do it. And so I'm of the belief that, and I'm giving you an opinion, this is an opinion. I'm of the belief that the further removed you get from an emotional moment, the more you let logic set in. Well, the emotion of that game will continue to dwindle, and the logic of why Lane is considered leaving to begin with will likely continue to resonate. I think had he stepped into that post-game press conference and announced he was staying, I think that would have been more likely than it happening tomorrow. Let's see the tree y'all got. When it's done being decorated, I'll show you the tree. We went to Clegg's today, got our tree. Shout out to Clegg's. They're awesome. Shout out to Chris, helped us out earlier today. Hey, Don, let's see. Do you believe Lane when he said he hasn't made up his mind? I believe he's torn because, I believe this firmly. Lane Kiffin wants to leave Ole Miss. He wants to be the LSU coach. He also wants to coach his team in the playoff. But I think he also knows his team is not going to win a national championship. They will probably be the 5 seed and host a game, very likely against maybe a G6 school. So they'll win. And then they'll go to a quarterfinal game, maybe in the Sugar Bowl, and probably lose, and their season will be over. And so is that worth it? I think that's what he's weighing. Hey, Bryce. Mark, guessing he's staying. Hope we can get a number 2 to compete with him. Brady would say, Drew, watch. I love it. Yeah, I'm not telling you. I want to be clear. If you're just jumping aboard, 1,300 watching live, appreciate y'all so much. Rob, I'm not telling you Kiffin is staying. I'm also not telling you definitively he's coming. I don't know. I would have told you earlier, this is right. I don't feel as good as it did earlier in the week. Based on, look, I'll tell you there's a few things I did have several conversations with Ole Miss sources that I have that their tone started to change later in the week. Maybe a little more, hey, this is a little more of a coin flip than we thought. Brett McMurphy did that piece where he asked 80 media members where they thought Lane was going to go. And 59 said LSU, 17 said Ole Miss. Well, of the 17 that said Ole Miss, one of them was Chris Lowe. Well, Chris Lowe does have a good relationship with Lane. So I think that made a lot of people go, So there's been some circumstantial things there this week that have given you pause to say Lane's, considering staying, which was not the case last Friday. A week ago today, last Friday, and when maybe tomorrow I'll be able to tell you everything when it's all done. But last Friday, LSU was at a point where they felt really, really good. No way Kiffin drags this out past Bama Texas games and make a decision. Texas and Texas A&M are tonight. Bama and Auburn, the Iron Bowl, is tomorrow night. So, I'm telling you, just grin and bear it. Cheer for A&M tonight. If A&M wins, Ole Miss is eliminated from the SEC championship conversation. And so that eliminates the possibility of Lane saying, you know what, can I just wait until the Iron Bowl to see if we're going to play in the SEC championship? Florida fans been living in delusion. Happy they finally have to eat their words. Good evening. Using your wedding analogy, are we at the altar? Kiffin might be a runaway bride. Maybe. I mean, LSU has gone all in on Lane Kiffin, and they have told him from the beginning they would be willing to wait as long as he would need. So if Ole Miss were going to let Lane Kiffin coach through the playoff, which they're not, but if they were, LSU would wait to the end of the playoff. They'd figure out the signing class and all that sort of stuff. But let's see some super chats. Hey, Mark, think it's time to move on? No, dude. You don't come all this way to be on the precipice of a decision and move on, man. Ethan, is it possible Kiffin has told LSU he's coming? That's why it's being reported that Florida is pivoting. Hey, Ethan, read between the lines of what I just told you about last Friday. Why not pay Frank Wilson $6 million, put $40 million in the roster, state of the game today? The players love Coach Wilson. Yeah, look, I think Coach Frank had a shot if the team had played better. They do love him. But I think you could also end up getting, let's say, John Summerall for $8 million, $7-8 million. And you've got a guy that's 43, that's been a head coach at two different places, has had a lot of success. You have better options, I think, is the point. If Frank had won, if they'd beaten Bama, maybe we're having a different convo. Hey, Braden, happy Thanksgiving, Black Friday. Should have settled Kelly for 40 when it was on the table. That's why you settle. Now, there is also the point, Braden, that they could, and thank you to Dr. Jordan Commander for the $5 super chat. There is always the possibility that BK gets another job. And so there's the mitigation clause comes into effect. And so ultimately, it would reduce that buyout. There is the possibility that happens. But as of right now, let's see, Kenneth, just want to sort of get my hopes up. I feel like the emotional pull is going to keep Lane there. Do you think it has to make everything awkward? I guess if you keep winning, it doesn't matter. Don't get me wrong, man. There's still a lot of people within that ecosystem there at Ole Miss that want Lane Kiffin gone. They do not like how this has been handled. They do not like that he still won't commit to them when they've given him everything. There are people, influential people in that state who who want him gone. But winning cures a lot. All right, Colby, what up, man? Mark, not getting him as a gut punch. You haven't lost him yet. Like, I'm telling you, that's like, don't it's natural to think as this week plays out, when he's radio silent, he's with his team, they're coaching, egg bowl, like emotion could shift things, but it doesn't mean that it's over. I did have a conversation with a really good source after the Egg Bowl who said this person told me that they still believe Lane is going to be the LSU coach. It's just I feels like a much more complicated decision today than it was certainly last Friday or even Monday or Tuesday of this week. Matt, you look drained. You know something we don't want to know. I don't. I genuinely do not know what Lane Kiffin is going to do. I don't know. I don't know what his answer is going to be. What I am very comfortable in saying, what I've said all along, is I believe Lane Kiffin wants to be the LSU coach. I also think he wants to coach his team in the playoff. If there was a world where the calendar worked out to where he could coach his team, they lose in the playoff, and then he could leave, he would do that, and this would be a non-issue. But Ole Miss is not going to let him coach in the playoff, so he has to decide, do I leave my team before the playoff to take the job that I want to take, or do I stay at a place that has a lower ceiling so I can coach in this year's playoff? He's got to make that decision. If Oliva was the AD and Kiffin got cold feet, do you think he would rush Frank to the podium like he did with Ed? Yeah, considering there's precedent for that. Mayfield, hope Clegg's got you good tree. We did, man. Had a great day at Clegg's. Great selection. Y'all get by and see our friends over at Clegg's Nursery. Get your Christmas trees. Matt, do you feel? I do feel. I have feelings. I wonder if he'll be able to resist coaching in the playoffs. That's the big question. You were 100% right about Florida fans being 2 weeks behind. I think it was a week to 10 days. And I did allude to this a little bit earlier on a Locked On podcast that I dropped. Ultimately, and the day will come, maybe it'll be tomorrow, where I'll be able to tell you much more detail. But in the week before, so Layla Kiffin visited Baton Rouge on a Monday. The week prior, something happened that rightly gave Florida an inclination that Lane Kiffin was going to be their coach. However, after that thing happened, which I'll be able to tell you about eventually, Layla Kiffin visited, and then Saban and Sexton and Kirby all encouraged Lane to take LSU over Florida because as LSU was showing real sincere interest and he was reciprocating, and then they were doing, and as that week built, it got to last Friday where ultimately the contract leaked and everything, and like it had completely shifted, and he was all in on LSU and not Florida. But the thing that happened the week before Layla Kiffin visited, I think a lot of people didn't find out about until this week, which is why a lot of Florida people maybe were still believing they were in it, which wasn't the case. Has it been the case for 2 weeks? Well, hasn't been the case for a week that they were in it, but the thing that they were holding out hope happened weeks ago. I'll explain more another day. Got to give credit where it's due. After keeping up with some Florida media, you really made them look bad unintentionally, of course, but still the same. I say it all the time. Consider the source. You decide who you deem credible. Things like this illustrate who is credible. It doesn't mean you can't have good opinions and be a talk show host and have a show, whatever, a columnist, but like not everybody is a credible reporter. That's why I say, like, if like there, God bless, there's the guy up in Arkansas who reported about Alex Golesh, and I feel so bad for him right now. It's his fault. I mean, he made this bet; he's got to lay in it. But he reported Alex Golesh was going to be the Arkansas coach. Well, when nobody else reports it, Dellinger, Bamel, Nakos, Lowe. Like, none of them are saying it. You know what I mean? Like, stay in your lane. Lane Kiffin already has packed his bags. I want Lane at LSU, but would like to see Lane finish out the playoffs with Ole Miss. It's not going to happen. They both won't happen, is what I mean. Florida fans are coping mode, to put it mildly. Gulf South, you and others said LSU pops every 4 or 5 years, 8-9 wins in between. My question is, why can't LSU be like Georgia with 10 wins yearly if they get the right coach? Our state has the talent. I agree with you. I think that's the goal, is to be that. But you have to find the right coach. And LSU hasn't been able to do that. You don't do all of this with multiple chances to announce you're staying put. No way until I believe it. That is the logical point of view. I don't disagree with you. That is a logical point of view. Is to say, at any point over the last 2 months, Lane Kiffin could have signed his extension. He didn't, which tells you he has a wandering eye and wants to leave. And the emotion of the game today clearly didn't get him caught up to where he made an emotional decision and said, all right, I'm staying. And I think that actually benefits LSU because now he has a night to sleep on it, talks to his family, all the things they've been discussing now for 2 weeks, the reasons why he's picked LSU. And they probably get back to that decision. That's what I think will happen, but I don't know. This is not going to stretch out another week. Lane Kiffin said in his post-game that he needs to make a decision. Keith Carter said last week in that statement they'll make a decision on Saturday. They have to make a decision. And I think that decision will come Saturday. One way or another. Staying or going to LSU, I think that decision will be made Saturday. He'll never win a championship at Ole Miss. If he stays, then he's unserious about winning a championship. I think that I agree with you, and I think that's the thing that weighs on him is he knows he has a lower ceiling. People are like, well, he made the playoff. Yes, he's made the playoff. He's made a 12-team playoff. But can he win a national championship? And the answer is probably no. You're well-sourced, sir. Yes, I am, actually. I am. It's a product of being responsible and doing a good job for a long time and cultivating really good relationships. And for a long time, I learned a long time ago, how you handle sensitive information determines if you keep getting sensitive information. So for a lot of years, y'all have listened to me. You've heard me give opinions, but they're opinions that oftentimes were rooted in things that I know that were phrased as opinions. It's just a little bit of a pivot for me professionally because of LouisianaSports.net for me to have to report news, which I don't love doing. Like, I'd rather just be a host where I can just give opinions because I do think it's unfair to you because it confuses the issue at times. Well, am I a reporter or am I an opinion maker? Both, but that's confusing. And if I had my druthers, I would just do opinions. Feels like Osbury's in over his head negotiating with Sexton. No. Could not disagree with that more. Verge and Sexton have a long-standing relationship. Verge has been in many of these, not just in football, but in all sports, in the negotiations for coaches. The hiring process. I could not disagree with more. How do you know he wants to leave? I'm not so sure about that. Yeah, because he's at a place where he's been for 6 years. There's a contract offer on the table to make him the highest paid coach in America. And he hasn't signed it. That is your answer. That's your answer. Like, it doesn't need to be more complicated than that. They've given him everything he wants. Roster, he runs the town. They're making him the highest paid coach in the country. And he won't sign his extension. That is the answer. There's no need to complicate it more than that. That's the answer. He wants to leave. I believe he loves Ole Miss. I do believe that. I do believe that he loves Ole Miss. but he wants to win a championship and doesn't think he can do it there. He's got a lower ceiling there, is what he thinks. Hey, Steve, what's going on, man? Adam Lane says he'll speak with Saban and Pete tonight, and that benefits LSU greatly. At this point, I think it's well known, but Nick Saban is one of the ones that Lane confides in and told him early in this process that LSU's a better job than Florida. It's interesting, but LSU may owe a big thank you to Nick Saban for this, because Nick is one of the ones that's pushed Lane to LSU. If Lane comes to LSU, what do you think will happen to the Ole Miss recruiting class flipping? I don't know. That is so not in my lane to be able to tell you what recruits may do, whatever. I don't know that. So I don't have a good answer for you. Sorry. Difference between Summerall and Napier pre-Florida. I would say the biggest difference is, well, first of all, Napier's an offensive guy. John Summerall played linebacker at Kentucky. So more of a defensive guy by trade. The other thing that I think is also relevant is Summerall has done it in this era. Napier, his last year at UL Lafayette was 2021. So he went to Florida the same year Kelly came to LSU. And I just think it matters knowing how to win in the NIL portal, now rev share era. And that's why I look at coaches that have done it. Like, I love John Summerall. I'm, to be very candid with you, as excited as everybody is about Lane Kiffin, and I understand that. He's the big name. He's the flashy toy, and I think he would do great. I would be over the moon if LSU hires John Summerall. And that's not new. I've said that for weeks now. And I'm a little embarrassed, quite honestly, because I haven't paid more attention to John Summerall until it became apparent that he was going to be in the mix at LSU. And so then I started paying attention and learning more and watching. And the more I see, the more I love. If John Summerall ends up at Florida, I'll be so bummed. But we'll see how this all transpires. But I think that's the biggest difference. What gave LSU the edge over Florida with Kiffin? Listen, it's a thing that I don't think Florida fans are going to want to hear, and they're just going to perceive it as an LSU guy. But again, it's not the decision I made. It's the decision Lane Kiffin made. Things we talk about all the time. It's the only Power 5 in a talent-rich state. At Florida, you have Florida State and Miami, and now also UCF and USF, teams that are in the Power 5, and you get plucked. You have a weird culture at Florida where it is booster driven, where there are 3 boosters that really run that athletic department. And it's not to say they have influence, but that really run things, which is not appealing to many. Florida's facilities are not great. There's a lot of things. People at LSU just care deeply. It's not to say Florida fans don't. It's a great program. We're splitting hairs here. But ultimately, at Florida, in their football history, there's 2 periods where they've been good. And when you had Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer as a coach, which are both Hall of Fame coaches, which is to say they could win anywhere. Les Miles and Ed Ogeron won championships at LSU. What did Dan Mullen and Billy Napier and Yellow Teeth and Ron Zook do at Florida? You can bottom out there, Let's see. Someone has to grow up. Either Lane needs to suck it up and forgo the playoff, or LSU has to move on, get a guy that can recruit for the next 2 months. See, I actually would disagree there. I think LSU is saying, we'll play the long game and wait for you. Someone needs to grow up. I agree, but the someone is either Keith Carter or Lane Kiffin. Kiffin is not eager to make his decision because he wants to keep coaching his team, which means Keith Carter needs to hold Kiffin's feet to the fire and demand an answer. And I believe that comes tomorrow. All right, please smash 1,700 people watching, man. Thank y'all. Please smash the like button, subscribe to the channel. Appreciate y'all for hanging out with us here. When you say Ole Miss won't let Kiffin coach in the playoffs if he says he's leaving, and you know that for a fact, I do. How are they going to stop him? So yeah, he's under contract. Yes. So as I understand it, based on many conversations I've had asking that exact question, there's verbiage in the contract that they feel like would allow them to do that. I don't know how you'd phrase it. Is he put on leave? Is he suspended? I don't know the answer to that. But what I have been told is that they do have verbiage in the contract whereby they could prevent him from coaching the team. And ultimately, he would just leave. So my question was, well, how could LSU hire the coach like anybody else hired? You just announce you've hired the coach. So the announcement it'd be interesting. The announcement may come from LSU that they've hired Lane Kiffin instead of the announcement from Ole Miss. I don't know that, by the way. I don't know that. I do not. I'm telling you candidly, I do not know that if that's how it goes. I'm saying that's one way it could go. Kiffin to Bama, don't laugh. The one thing that could play out that scenario is, let's say hypothetically, Bama loses the Iron Bowl tomorrow to Auburn. They run DeBoer out of town. He goes to Penn State. I don't know if there's any truth to that at all. I don't know. I don't have great inside info at Penn State. I have no idea if they'd be interested. But if that were the case, that's what you could see. And then if Bama came open, would Lane take Bama? Probably at Saban's behest. But I don't know that I see that as real. And look, and if you're trying to wrap this thing up tomorrow morning, right? Like if Kiffin and Keith Carter are having a meeting tomorrow and they make a decision from that meeting, then LSU is going to announce their coach. So if Lane stays at Ole Miss after all this, they may want their money back with all the drama. Been enjoying the Florida meltdown. Stadler's, Matt, the only problem I have about them losing today making it easier, I'd be looking at it in terms of, am I staying here for one special season that I have, or do I want longevity, better job? Yeah, I wouldn't read too much into this, Preston. He did refer to his players as them, but he always does that. He when he talks about his players, and trust me, I've ended up listening to a lot of Lane Kiffin press conferences and interviews over the past month or so. He does that. Nick, Kiffin is a narcissist. He always wants bigger, better, more flashy things. LSU is the shiny object. His ego will force him to leave. There's a strong belief that that's true, Nick. Now, I've told you this before. I don't know Lane Kiffin. I don't know him personally. I cannot tell you from my personal experience that the things you just said are true. There are people that know Lane Kiffin who have said those things you just did, who said those to me about him. But that's not my words. If Trinidad wins his appeal, does he follow Kiffin? Maybe. That's one of the look. The last couple of weeks have been pretty toxic in Oxford, and I was told within the program too, with some players who wanted Lane out. I have no problem saying that. But there are players that are loyal to Lane, and Trinidad Chambliss is one of them. I wouldn't be surprised if Lane left if he followed. Are you willing to make a prediction tonight? You know, the thing is, David, my job is to give opinions, and I'll always give you opinions. The challenging thing here is I know whatever I say, y'all are going to nail me to the wall on it. And I don't have the answer. I don't have the answer. I don't know what Lane Kiffin is going to say. But what I've said all along, like with varying degrees of confidence, like earlier this week, starting last Friday. Last Friday was a really big day, y'all. Last Friday was a massive day. Yeah, I think you're getting my drift here. Which is why everything was going the way it was. And, you know, and I think people at Ole Miss recognize that as well. I don't think I know. And they had started soft launching their search. Because I'm going to tell you what Ole Miss is fearful of. Ole Miss, if Kiffin leaves, they want John Summerall. And I think John Summerall would prefer Ole Miss to Florida. And their concern is do we miss out on Summerall? Like with all this Kiffin footsie stuff that's going on, like does Summerall take another job? And do we miss out on the guy that we'd want if Lane leaves? Of course, they want Lane to stay, but if he leaves, they miss out on their guy. So that's where midweek they started ramping up their search, like what things are out there, which is why, I mean, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier. I don't mind telling you all this. Auburn pushed John Summerall for an answer. Like they wanted it today. And I think John Summerall was like, So there's a report from Thamel that Summerall is going to wait until Sunday to make his decision. So I think that tells you Auburn is not, but he preferred, because I think Auburn would have given John Summerall a contract now. But because he's waited, it tells you there's other opportunities he covets that he feels will be there. Do you think Ole Miss regrets setting the tomorrow deadline, at least publicly? Probably. Yeah. I think Keith Carter put in that statement. Probably. There was no reason to do it. I mean, they painted themselves into a corner with that. Juan, what up, man? Greetings from Doyline. I don't even know where that is. Hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Do you think there's announcements tonight or tomorrow? Not tonight. I think tomorrow. Sure feels like my best read here is that I think they'll meet tomorrow, Kiffin and Keith Carter, and he'll decide tomorrow. I think Carter will force a decision, and then we'll find out what it is. What that one is. This is one. So this is an Ole Miss fan, H-Town Rebs, I would assume. LSU ceiling is too low for Lane Kiffin to come. I mean, I guess you're probably like just trolling, but like objectively, you have to know that's not true, right? And this isn't like Ole Miss has done. They've won 50 games under Lane Kiffin the last 5 years. That's incredible. The only teams in the SEC to win more over that time are Alabama and Georgia. They also haven't won a championship in 60 years. The celebrated game against Florida, where they had 68,000 people. I said this on my Locked On podcast. I think I said it on AFR too, but it was the largest crowd in the history of Vaught Hemingway. On the same day, 5-4 LSU played 2-7 Arkansas at 11:45 in the morning and had more people in Tiger Stadium. That's the difference. And it's not to say Ole Miss can't be good at times, but the ability to sustain success at a national championship level is not possible at Ole Miss. That's the point. Can you have good seasons? Can you make a playoff? Sure, Lane's proven that. But the ability to sustain success at a national championship level does not exist at Ole Miss like it does at LSU or Florida or Bama or Georgia or Tennessee or Texas A&M, where they have the resources to be able to do it. Hearing Kiffin speak about missing his dad, do you think Kiffin could be more sentimental, thought about what he has at Ole Miss? No, I do not. Who would want to stay in Oxford? Oxford's there's a lot of appeal to Oxford. Like, I can understand as a rival, like, you don't want to say nice things, but Oxford's a great college town. I mean, it's small, it's clean, there's no crime. You have the university there. Now, like, there's not a ton to do, right? There's not like great culture and restaurants and all kind of stuff, but there's a lot of appeal to Oxford if that's the type of life you want. Now, what I don't think, or who I think doesn't want that life, is Layla Kiffin, who, spent time in LA and Manhattan Beach. And, I think they probably prefer a little more action. And I think that was a big part of her visit to Baton Rouge, was like, we don't want to live here. Do you feel Lane would add Coach O and retain Corey? I don't know about the Coach O thing. I've seen the reports everyone else has. I know from Coach O's perspective, of course, he would take the job. He wants to work, right? His Coach O's last buyout payment is in December. So he's no longer on LSU's payroll after December. So he wants to work. That's why you're having this insistence. Now, a lot of the stuff, the Arkansas interest, the Oregon State interest, that's one-sided. That's agent talk on one side. That's not coming from the other side. So I think Coach O could certainly be a really good defensive line coach somewhere and at LSU. And maybe Lane Kiffin would be interested in hiring him. I don't know that he would. I've not asked Lane Kiffin, hey, if you take the LSU job, would you hire Coach O? I think that's a conversation to have. The interesting thing about Corey, so Corey and Frank are the two that everyone just assumes you got to keep. Well, talking to people on staff at Ole Miss, Lane has he likes his running backs coach and his defensive backs coach a lot too. So I think that would be very complicated for how you'd make those staff decisions work. Because getting rid of Frank or Corey, I feel like, man, especially like we've seen that movie before, and I don't want to see that again. Say Lane chooses LSU. Would he leave LSU when DeBose gets fired? That's a good question. Maybe. I don't know. But I don't think you hire a coach or make a coaching decision based on what might happen in the future. I don't think you say, well, I don't want to hire that guy because he might leave. If Kiffin stays at Ole Miss, I'd like Kenny Dillingham. As much as I want Lane, I'm concerned the win today pushes him to stay. Just don't think that it's one win. I really don't. Just candidly, my bigger concern from that perspective was Lane gets emotional, walks in the post game and says, I'm staying. That's what I was sort of holding my breath. He didn't do that. He had multiple opportunities. It was like, no, I'll take some time. I'm going to pray about it, think about it. And like that sides with LSU because you remove yourself from the emotion of the game, being around your team in the stadium, the win and all that stuff. And now you're quiet, you're with your family, and then it becomes more logical and less emotional. Matt, thanks for the info. Hard work. Thank you, man. Appreciate it, Glenn. By the way, 1,800 people watching live. That's awesome. Appreciate y'all for hanging on. Please smash the like button if you would. Subscribe to the channel. I'll remind you about, if you don't mind, Parish Construction and Roofing. I'm a partner in Parish, so service the whole state of Louisiana. We actually have really good news for all you in Texas coming up as well, specifically Austin. But we'll tell you more about that coming up. But we'd love to give you roof repair, replacement, free, no obligation roofing inspections. We do gutters, soft wash, all that stuff. Parishbuilt.com, parishbuilt.com, parishbuilt.com. I got parishbuilt.com linked in the description, as a matter of fact. Kiffin would bring players to Baton Rouge if Carter was to allow him to coach the playoffs. Not to mention overshot. No doubt. So listen, if you watch the Egg Bowl today, the entire game, Ole Miss, top 10 in the country, playing their rival, win gets them in the playoff, the whole game, Lane Kiffin, LSU, not going to Florida, LSU, Ole Miss, staying, the whole game. They're just not going to allow Kiffin, Ole Miss in the playoff, for a man to be standing on their sideline while coaching another team. They're just not going to do it, nor should they. So, if Lane came for 5 years, won a Natty, bolted for the NFL, would you call that a success? Yes, absolutely. I mean, Ogeron's tenure was a success. Despite how horribly it ended, the loss to Troy in his first year, it produced 2019. It produced Joe Burrow. It produced the greatest season in the history of college football. Of 100 times out of 100, I would take the Ogeron era. So if Lane came here for 5 years, won a Natty, and left for the NFL, absolutely, I would take that. Because then that just makes it easier for the next guy to want the job. Because it continues to show how many coaches can win. Baker, Louisiana ties. Wilson, Louisiana ties. Raymond, Louisiana ties. All brought back by Kelly. It's a smart thing Brian Kelly did. Now, he did it at the sort of behest of a lot of people around him. Was to hire Louisiana people. Appreciate the answer. Have tons of appreciates that. Give me a bourbon to try at Lola tonight. I don't know what Lola is. I'll tell you what, look, we had a great relationship with our friends at Pinhook, who sponsor some of the AFR shows this year at Don Juan. See if you can snag a bottle of Pinhook. Affordable. You can find it at a lot of places. It's delicious. They do a great job. Hey, Cody. Lane definitely has cold feet, Matt. It's $39.99. What, baby?
$2.
Okay, let's see it. All right. It's Mickey Mouse Clubhouse time. Mickey Mouse Clubhouse O'Toodles. Is that it? Is that what you want?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll see you later. O'Toodles. True. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate that. Matt, to me, I would worry if I'm an LSU fan about the BK buyout. It's a bad look for coaches that the university doesn't want to pay the buyout. I agree with you, which is why ultimately I think they bit the bullet and were like, just do it. Be done. I think that was a huge part of that this week because I think there was sentiment that LSU couldn't pay. And so LSU's offering Lane this contract where Ross Dellinger, someone leaked the terms to Dellinger. And then you have the promise of the NIL on top of the rev share. And Lane, I think rightly sitting there going, okay, well, can you actually afford this? If you're nickel and diming your former coach because you don't want to pay him a buyout, and then would you actually honor mine if something went sideways? So I think that's a very logical train of thought, which is why I think it was important for them to say, like, fine, here, $54 million, yes, be done, be gone, we'll pay you your money. Not work. But I mean, logically, you and I and many saw that from the onset of this whole thing. Yeah, so I answered this one already. If they won't allow him to coach in the playoffs, would they have to fire him and pay his buyout? Why not allow him to coach, make him quit? Seems like a win-win. Possible Natty saves cash. Yeah. So no, they're not going to fire him. He has a $36 million buyout, by the way. But as I understand, there is verbiage in the contract whereby they could prevent him from coaching the team. And so ultimately he would just leave. He would take the LSU job. If that's what he wants to do, then that's what he would do. You would leave. You would just, that's what you take the job that you're taking and you leave per the terms of your contract. And Lane, there's a $3 million buyout if Lane were to leave, I think before December 1st. So if tomorrow he announces he's leaving and LSU hires him as the coach, LSU would owe Ole Miss $3 million. That's his buyout. Oh, cool. Lola's a nice restaurant in Covington. Very cool. Seth, got to say you're a great dad, Matt. Thank you. Best job in the world, man. I think everyone on here who's is Koffel at the airport. I don't know. I think everyone on here who's a dad knows that, man. Like we love our teams. We're emotional about it. And sports are fun, but man, it's just nothing matters as much as your family and your kids. And, nothing that we ever do here, anything anybody ever says to or about me will matter as much as Drew. So anyway, national media is just now reporting Florida out of the running. Matt's been saying this for 2 weeks now. Brent Key agenda needs to be pushed. He's an amazing coach. Yeah. Lane Kiffin's the uncommitted boyfriend in this situation. It's good. It's not a bad analogy. No, I was told Key was one of the ones when Florida, again, more than a week ago, when Florida started moving on in their search, they were talking to Key, Clark Lee, who got an extension today as well, Jimmy Sexton client. So again, Florida's talking to Lane Kiffin, represented by Jimmy Sexton, two other Sexton clients, Key, Lee. You connect the dots with agents a lot, y'all. That's how a lot of that world works. This is, I think, the appeal, right? Lane's not leaving LSU if he builds and establishes culture dynasty, wants the Saban treatment. That is the thing that I think has motivated Lane in this, which is the opportunity to do at his own place, say what Saban did at Bama, stay a long time, win multiple championships, create your legacy as the greatest there. And I don't think he feels like he can do that, the championships part at Ole Miss. And I know there's Ole Miss people watching right now, and I feel part of me, like I'm not the guy that's going to sit here and like point fingers and poke fun at you. Because listen, LSU lived that with Saban 20 years ago. He left for the NFL because it was something that Nick Saban loved LSU. He won a championship at LSU. He could have stayed here forever, and they gave him everything that he could have wanted, and his family and his wife and everything. But he wanted something else that you couldn't offer, so he left. And it's kind of the same thing for Ole Miss right now. Like, you've given Lane Kiffin everything he wants. You adored him. You give him players, support, money, booster, everything. Give him everything he wants. But he wants something else that you can't offer, which, like, the state of Mississippi isn't all of a sudden going to become more populous. The Ole Miss isn't all of a sudden going to have a 100,000 seat stadium with multiple national championships in their recent history. And you just can't be what you're not. So I empathize with Ole Miss from that standpoint. I really do. I mean, as an LSU fan and alum, of course, like I would love to pull Lane Kiffin away because I think it makes LSU better, makes Ole Miss worse. And LSU is going to play Ole Miss every year in the new format. And so, yeah, I would much rather play Ole Miss without Lane Kiffin there. But anyway. Pinhook store picks are fire. You're saying if Bama came open, Lane would leave. I don't know that. I can't say that I have any information that would tell me that. I don't know. All right, please smash the like button if you would. Subscribe to the channel. Blake Baker will not be retained. The Baker piece of this is interesting from several aspects. Like, it sure looks like John Summerall is going to get a head coaching job, either Florida, Ole Miss, or LSU. I think the Lane Kiffin domino falls Saturday, and then John Summerall domino falls on Sunday. So Lane will pick LSU or Ole Miss. And then I think after that, Summerall Sunday picks between the two remaining options. So Tulane would then come open, and I think Blake Baker would be at or near the top of the list for Tulane's head coaching job. A year ago, Summerall was heavily in the mix for North Carolina. They ultimately hired Bill Belichick, as you remember. But when it was looking like Summerall was going to take that North Carolina job, Baker was heavily in the mix for the Tulane. Blake Baker played at Tulane. His wife's from the North Shore. Obviously has ties to Louisiana. So I think there's a real possibility that Baker is Tulane's head coach next year. Are you surprised the amount of coaches staying put despite the openings? No, because I think something you got to keep in mind is a lot of times they know so use Eli Drinkwitz, for example. I think Eli Drinkwitz absolutely would take another job. But Eli Drinkwitz has been everybody's plan B. He was LSU's number 2. He was like Florida's number 2. Like he was down the line at Auburn. He's everybody's number 2. So you're sitting there and you're going, all right, well, hold out and wait to see if something shakes. Meanwhile, my current place is offering me an extension. Look at Kiffin. I mean, Missouri put an extension on the table for him. Now, I mentioned this earlier, but I'll say it again in case you missed it. I did get a call earlier today, so that Drinkwitz's the extension he signed at Missouri. Sorry, I just remember I have to do something for Drew. Sorry. The extension he signed in Missouri, the buyout did not change. So he could, even though he agreed to this extension, he could leave with the same buyout as yesterday. And what I was told is like he would be open to it for the right situation. But I don't know if that situation actually arises. All right. Been on here for an hour. Might get rolling. Please smash the like button again. Subscribe to the channel if you would. Shout out to Parish Construction and Roofing. You know what? Y'all could help. You know what you could help two ways. One, you can go to parishbuild.com, sign up for a free, no obligation inspection. Let's come and do a roof inspection. Or number two, even if you don't do that, if you leave us like a 5-star Google review, that'd be a huge help for Parish Construction and Roofing. And even if we didn't do work at your house, like we do a lot of philanthropic work. We love to give back. The Go Red for Women luncheon, we sponsored that. We sponsored tons of the St. Jude Fair, the Our Lady of Mercy Fair, tons of church events. We're doing our 12 Days of Christmas giveaway where we partner with other local businesses to help 12 needy families have a better Christmas. So anyway, proud of our company, and I'll never charge y'all for my content ever. I'm allergic to paywalls. So as long as I'm ever in charge of whatever I'm doing, I'll never put up a paywall. But the way I always say is the way that you could reciprocate is just patronize our sponsors. I got Bocock on there as well. Bocock Brothers Premium Cigars. These are awesome, man. This is their luxury edition. So 20 cigars. I don't know if you can tell that's the LSU logo. This is the championship box. I think they're sold out of. They do have the pinstripe baseball box though. BocockBrothers.com. Use the code MAT15, MAT15, MAT15 for 15% off your order, actually. And by the way, I know there's probably a lot of Ole Miss people watching as well. The cigars that the Ole Miss players were smoking today in the locker room are Bocock Brothers cigars. They're an LSU. They're brothers who went to LSU, but they've done an amazing job building up their brand and getting a lot of the licenses with a lot of the schools. So they have officially licensed products. So LSU and Ole Miss and A&M and Florida and a lot of them. So I just posted the link and use the code MAT15, MAT15 for 15% off your order. There you go. Saving a box for the Natty celebration. Maybe I'll smoke it when Lane gets hired. Love it. Anything else? Let me wrap this up so I can go watch Texas A&M. All right. Appreciate y'all, man. Thanks for being here. Let's bounce. Did an hour. Appreciate y'all for hanging out. Okay. If anything breaks, I'll certainly let you know. I don't think we're going to have anything tonight. Lane left Starkville, was going straight to Tupelo for his son's high school playoff game. Then he's supposed to be going back to Oxford, where he's going to meet with Keith Carter tomorrow. I would guess that's in the morning. After which, I guess we'll have a decision. And when we have a decision, Kiffin watch will be over. On your way out, do me a favor. Please smash the like button. Just hit the little thumbs up. That would be a big help too. Just hit the thumbs up. And if you're new, subscribe to the channel. So, okay, y'all go check out LouisianaSports.net, bookmark it. We'll have all of our stuff there as well. Have a great night.